Welcome to the video review and bonus materials from Westeros.org for episode 4, The Sons of the Harpy. We will be giving you some background material on the Faith Militant. We will serving up our highs and lows for this episode, and we will be going through it story by story as usual.
The Faith Militant are introduced in this episode, and you see them, they're the black robe guys wearing chains. I'm not quite sure where the chains came from, and carving the 7-pointed star on their foreheads. Now, they are very different from the Faith Militant of the books. Some of the details, you know, Cersei mentions to the High Septon, High Sparrow, they were, or he mentions, they were disarmed 2 centuries ago and so on. That is from the books. Now, the actual Faith Militant were basically 2 military orders. There was the warrior sons, who were sort of the elite of the elite. They were mostly highborn, and they were kind of the personal guard and personal army of the High Septon. And then you had the poor fellows, who were a much larger group. They were common men, many of them not knights, some knights among them, but mostly not, and they existed basically to defend the faithful. Back then, the faith had the right to punish people who broke who sinned against the gods. They had a sort of a clerical court where they could mete out justice on behalf of the Seven. Now, why did they lose this? Well, it had to do with the Targaryens. The first High Septon, when the Targaryens, well, not the first, but the High Septon who was around when Aegon and his sisters invaded, he's the one who kind of convinced Lord Hightower to throw open the gates of Old Town and welcome Aegon, and personally crowned Aegon in the... and he was fine with the Targaryens and such. He kind of saw what the gods told him, they're going to rule the 7 kingdoms, don't get in their way, or there'll be death and destruction on the faithful. So it worked out. But when Aegon and his sister started having children, and later on, their children had children, there was talk of, continuing the Targaryen tradition, the Valyrian sort of tradition of incest. And here the Faith said, we don't really like that idea, guys. Don't do that. We'll tolerate it in you guys, but don't keep it up. And Aegon kind of let it go for the most part. But after he died, his son Aenys the First became king, and there was more pressure for it. And also, he was a very different man from his father, and he couldn't handle the fact that there was all these rebellions started to, all these turmoil over his reign being weaker. He died early, had an ulcer or something, couldn't handle all the strain, and his brother Maegor became king after him, usurping his nephew. And there it kind of got very, very bloody, because the warrior sons...
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, exactly, because the warrior sons and the poor fellows went to all-out war against Maegor, and they had allies among the nobility, and it was a very nasty, very savage war. Maegor was Maegor the Cruel, and for a reason. There was all sorts of details. We find that there was a trial of 7 against 7 knights of the warrior sons, including their Grand Master, which Maegor and his companions won barely. Maegor was in fact almost killed, basically, and was in a coma for a long stretch until one day he woke up, looked up out from the walls of his castle in the King's Landing, mounted up on Balerion, and proceeded to rain hell on the warrior sons. He burned the Sept of Remembrance and hundreds of, these noble, pious knights, and the war really went on in earnest. It was, at the end of it, basically, there was a bounty on warrior sons and poor fellows. A gold piece for a warrior son's head or scalp even, I can't recall, and like a silver for a poor fellow. Maegor, of course, died on the Iron Throne. Some say killed by the Iron Throne. And it was up to Jaehaerys I, the conciliator, to fix things, to sort it out. And what he did is he said, well, look, it doesn't really work for the faith to be independently deciding judicial matters and to have its own army. I don't care for that. But what I'll do is I'll promise that the crown will always defend the faith in all things if you lay down your arms. And that's what happened. Basically, the High Septon ordered the last of the warrior sons and the poor fellows to surrender. And since that time, the faith has become increasingly bound up with the crown, I think it's safe to say. And
kind of like how the Swedish church used to be.
yeah,
Sort of, it became subordinate to the state, a part of the
absolutely.
state.
It's the Church of England. All these
Yeah.
churches in Europe that kind of threw off the Catholic Church and
Yeah.
kind of had kings become the heads of their the church of their country, of their kingdom. It's the exact same kind of thing happened.
Except with more dragons.
So, I mean, obviously the High Septon stays around, but... And I won't say that the High Septon has been reduced to the role of sort of like Archbishop of Canterbury. He is clearly a pope, but he is a pope who is semi-subordinated to the crown. It depends on the High Septon. Some High Septons have had more influence than others. But that's a Faith Militant. The way we're depicted is quite a departure. They're much more brutal zealots. We'll have more to say about that when we get to discussing the King's Landing storyline. They come off very differently. So our high for this one is
Yeah, an invented scene, in fact.
Invented scene. Many people will probably be surprised. This is basically the second episode in a row where we kind of singled out.
I mean, partially because it's kind of becoming hard to find scenes that are actually from the books. So, in a sense, we have to go with things that feel tonally right, feel like they could be. I mean, not necessarily fully in the characterization either, but just the tone of it, I think, and the interaction is something that isn't out of the place that George could have written a scene like that for the books. Perhaps not with Stannis.
Well, I could see this as a weary Stannis kind of finally talking to his daughter this way. I could. And to me, the thing that really got me was the scene between Shireen and Stannis is so beautiful in a lot of ways. Really well acted, and Stephen Delane has been is one of the great actors on the show, and he just hasn't really often had much to do. But there's a couple of things I love about it. One is it really hits home. Focus on one particular part of Stannis, how his iron. You know, we have the example from Donald Noy talking about how each of the brothers, one was the true steel, and Renly was copper, and Stannis was iron. Strong but brittle. It'll break before it bends. This really showed to me, like, it was a great way of showing Stannis' iron will. His absolute refusal to give up on his daughter. His insistence that she'll stay with him and that they will heal her. And by sheer force of will, she survives. I thought that was a beautiful way to show that aspect of the character.
I mean, maybe they were inspired by that little bit in the books about him and the hawk that he, the hunting bird that he decides to take care of. This has a broken wing, I think, and he insists on getting it healthy and able to fly, even though he can't compete with Robert's splendid bird and all of that. So it shows that there is a surprisingly soft streak somewhere under. That he actually has a sympathy for broken things.
I mean, obviously this whole section, this whole scene, I mean, had lots of and I don't know. I mean, the credited writer is Dave Hill, and what assumes is Dave Hill, but we know from the way they write things that not all scenes that you see in an episode are written by the person they say. There are scenes shuffled around, and David and Dan have a hand, quite a heavy hand on everything that's written. So I can't say 100% that Dave Hill absolutely wrote this. It could be David and Dan. It could be something that Brian wrote. I have no idea. Whoever wrote it, though, did a brilliant job, because what I loved about it is, I pointed this out in the written review, and it's a simple thing, but it's the fact that there's so many things that are kind of left unsaid, where, you can go from point A to point C, and they don't really tell you, and here's point B. So a good example is, are you lonely? Oh, I'm just bored. And then someone fills up, well, my father used to say that boredom is a sign of a lack of inner resources. And Shireen pauses and were you often bored? And she makes a connection. Well, why was her father or his father telling him that? Well, he probably told his father, oh, I'm bored. Yeah. So at some point, so I love that. And there's a couple other examples of a Dornish trader who brings the doll, who thinks fathers would be an easy mark. And next thing you know, I remember how you smile when I put it. And so, like, yes, he was an easy mark.
Yeah. He doesn't go and say it, but...
It's a little thing, but it's a sort of thing that sometimes feels like maybe the show lacks. Sometimes things are very explicit. Like, everything's laid out.
Yeah, no, that's a good... Obviously, there are changes here. There are some fairly significant...
Well, yes.
Shireen's story in that her grayscale there were no maesters or healers or anything
Involved.
involved. It just stopped, and that probably is somewhat significant.
I don't.
Well,
I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Well, in the sense that we have Val commenting to Jon about how, you know, that girl is, you know, dead, basically. Grayscale never stops.
Yeah, that's a wildling thing. I don't know.
Yes, I don't... I think that Grayscale is going to play more of a part in the novels, and I don't know that Shireen isn't going to be some significance to that. I
mean, I have in my head what her story is, and I don't think it has to do with Grayscale. Grayscale may play a role in the story, but not via her.
I'm not convinced. I'm not entirely convinced. And then, of course, they make a very surprising change.
Yes, the one caveat is the weird thing that, you know, where he says, you know, they told me to send you off to the ruins of Valyria to live out your short days with the stone men, and that's like, what? Well, because you know, okay, in the books, and this is a weird thing because I think I see what they're doing, which is in the books, the stone men are people they're kind of like lepers. Where you had leper colonies in the Middle Ages where people shoved off lepers and kept them away. They were kind of a leper colony on the Rhoyne, the River Rhoyne, in the ruins of the Rhoynish city of Troyane.
And this all connects to what we mentioned, I think, last week,
where they
the
cut
curse of Garin the Great, which basically legend has it that it is basically Grayscale that he unleashed on the world via the water mages and their power, the Rhoynish magic, and you have a bunch of them.
Yeah, and what they've done is obviously the thing that makes you think they've cut out the whole river journey, because the river journey in the novels where Tyrion goes on the river and he goes for Troyane and they fight the stone men or kind of run into the stone men, and then he ends up sort of approaching Volantis. They've cut that. He goes straight to Volantis. I'm kind of thinking that the reason they say the ruins of Valyria is, well, if you look at the map, between Volantis and Slaver's Bay is Valyria, and we have Jorah on a boat with Tyrion. So are we going to have him go to the ruins of Valyria and run to stone men? Because they brought him up now twice.
Yeah.
In the previous episode, they brought it up in Volantis when the priestess was talking about
curing. Yeah. You're right. So, and that would be a huge departure. I mean, George has said that it's unlikely that anyone will be seeing the ruins of Valyria. They're supposed to be quite haunted, quite dangerous. Mr. Ironborn not appearing in this show, Euron Crowseye, claims to have gone there, but even that is highly dubious because it's that dangerous to go.
No, I mean, it's to get there you have to go through a smoking sea where there's and I mean Tyrion sees it from a distance in the Dance of Dragons, or not even sees it directly. He sees the sort of fiery redness of clouds far distance above it, but basically there's still very active volcanic activity. It's not a place that humans are supposed to be. So it'll be if they go there, and I don't know what they will. It'll be a very different Valyria.
Yeah, there's supposed to be demons and all the
demon haunted and
yeah. Wish they would have left that alone, but
I wish they kind of maybe used one of the sort of this ruined Valyrian cities on the peninsula that wasn't Valyria, because Valyria proper makes me feel like, that's a little...
It's kind of like having, if Lord of the Rings didn't, going into Mordor, if it didn't involve that, let's have the whole trooping off to Mordor. You just don't walk into Valyria or sail into...
I speak of that gif, just walk into...
Yes, you do. You totally do.
Anyways, but the sea was really beautiful. The Valyria thing we'll see.
We kind of have to bring it up because it's such a what the fuck.
And Valos, wow, the sand snakes. What to say about them? They are
nothing, perhaps.
God, I know David and Dan have said that they really love Dor. They really wanted to include Dor, but could it really have been because of the sand snakes? Because they
didn't get anything, at least.
They turned them into. I mean, Eloria aside, we already spoke about what they've done to Eloria. I mean, the Sand Snakes, look, the Sand Snakes in the books are not the deepest character. They are tertiary characters. They are minor characters who play a role. But even briefly sketched by George, there's a bit of Fox Force 5 at, one's the hot one, one's the spear fighter, one's a poisoner.
They're all very distinctive, each of them sort of taking after something after their mothers, and then they have some things in common from Oberyn, and so it's kind of very fantasy in
that respect. But at the same time, they have their different methods, they have their different approaches, they dress differently, they have a shared look because of their father, but at the same time they take after their mothers for the most part. And you also learn a little bit about them you learn about the childhood of some of them, not just Obora. You learn about relationships they have, not just with one another, but with other people outside of the family. And that starts to give you the beginnings of actual characters. What we have here are just B-movie bad girls, as the EW reviewer said. They are,
and in particular, the way that they're characterized in the scene with this ship's captain. Like, why the fuck are they torturing him?
Yeah, why would they kill the guy? Why?
I mean, he apparently told them about Jaime. So, okay, so maybe he didn't perhaps volunteer it to start with, or...
Well, he's trying to sell the information, and they decided to take it from him and kill him because obviously they're not happy that Jaime is there, and which just raises all sorts of questions, of course. But it's just... I don't know, it's just, to me, I can't imagine that they're going to make much more of them. I don't
understand why they went with 3.
I'd rather that they had just have one because I don't know. To me,
the writing, the acting,
I just can't think. I can't imagine with just 6 episodes left that they're gonna flesh these characters out massively.
Personally, I don't want to see them anymore.
I mean, I will say this one. I saw the little sort of introducing Dorne and the Sand Snakes video that HBO put out. I
didn't.
You didn't even watch it all, I know, but I watched it, and I have to say I was really underwhelmed.
The worst promotional thing they put out,
I think I said it was the worst piece of promotional material they put out, because I don't know. I mean, Keisha Castle-Hughes was fantastic in The Whale Rider. I think she's a very capable actress. But like the staging of a scene where she's telling her story, she's wandering around and people moving around watching her, and it's very theatrical and stagey. And
you don't want people telling those sort of stories.
Well,
she doesn't tell it in the books. Somebody else tells it about her, right? No, of course not.
No.
All right, that's the other part of it.
She tells the story, but it's a direct.
It's a dialogue.
It's a dialogue.
I thought about the other part that Hota quotes about her and such. But absolutely right. But it's the sort of standing up and
walking,
declaiming,
putting her back to everyone and kind of declaiming it. It's just very, very stagey.
And then finishing off with throwing a spear in.
I don't have a problem with that part.
Together with the speech, it just felt, as you said, B-movie bad girl announcing their nefarious intentions.
Yeah,
that was the whole vibe I got from it.
Yeah, I'm just really disappointed because I really expected a lot of Dorne. I mean, Cassie Alexander Siddig was fantastic. I knew that they wanted to show Dorne. They said they wanted to show Dorne. I thought they were going to do, because of that they would.
Well, I think that they read those chapters and they went, "Ooh, cool! We've got these cute, awesome chicks that fight."
I don't know. I'm.
It's
baffled.
like Xena,
I'm baffled.
except there's several of them.
It's early. We don't know exactly how the whole story's going to go, so it's entirely possible they'll do something really surprising and amazing. I am dubious. I am greatly dubious. Look, I mentioned I was going to discuss this. What I would have preferred is that it was the Sand Snakes that give a few more minutes and have the Sand Snakes be the one who goes to Doran in that second episode. Have them be the ones and get a bit more out of them. Have them arguing. Have them talking to him about different approaches they could take. Let's go to war and attack Old Town. Let's crown Myrcella. Let's poison. Let's kill her. And then when he refuses, they go off. And the next thing we see in this episode, they're riding out to meet someone, and it's Ellaria. And we find out, oh wow, Ellaria's put them up to it, or she's involved with them, and she's the one who says, maybe she's the one who has the information about Jaime, and she's the one who sets them off after him, and so on. At least, even though that's a very different depiction of Ellaria, at least we've met Ellaria. We know who she is. We don't need to have her be the one to introduce us to Doran. We could have these new characters be introduced at the same time and get more out of them.
Yeah.
And then maybe you could do some other stuff that I'll discuss later in the season that would have been really great, I think. But as it is...
Well, no, really great is what's in the novels.
Well, okay, well, would have worked well, if not as well as what's in the books, because in the books, they completely cut out what is a family tragedy to go with.
You kind of, this whole story, yes, Doran is one side of the story, but there's another side to sort of the heart of the whole story, and Arianne, and she has been cut out completely.
Yeah.
And that's...
And on the other side,
it's the conflict between Doran and Arianne, and then
Quentin on the other side.
And that's what makes Dorne really sort of, that's what makes us feel something about Dorne.
Yeah.
The fact that then you have sort of the Sand Snakes. I mean, I was always dubious, a little bit dubious of their introductions, and I on their own, I don't think that they add anything. They are there as colorful elements around the other players. They're not the focal point, because if they were the focal point, George would have done something different with them. It's similar to like a character like Shay.
Yeah.
Yes, you can say that she's more complex on the show. They had to do something with her because they choose to foreground her much more than in the novels. If you're not foregrounding a character, you cannot make them as complex.
I'm sure they foregrounded her much more.
Well, they tried.
Yeah.
Because they tried to make something different out of the relationship and just made a mess of it instead. So they felt they had to invent more to be able to do more with her. They probably feel that... And here they're foregrounding tertiary characters who are there acting around other characters in the novels. And by doing so, they take what are relatively thin sketches in the novels and somehow manage to make them even thinner in their attempt to make them something that can stand on their own and be interesting on their own. And
I don't think they really... I don't think they made the attempts to make them any better. I think they just thought that they would...
Well, they thought if they just upped some elements, and they're all fighters now. Even poor Tyrion, who looks so bloody misplaced and hopeless, and...
I was very surprised by her portrayal. I don't know the actress, but obviously she was told she seems to be playing her as the youngest of the Sand Snakes, and she's playing her like
12.
She seems she doesn't look 12, but she plays her as she's very young.
Yeah, in that outfit, she kind of looked 12. It was very unflattering.
She just came off a little awkward. I don't know. I'm very disappointed. I'm really concerned about how a Dorne storyline goes, because for me it was something. I mean, the location. Well, okay, location. We'll discuss the location about it. The palace is fantastic for the water garden.
The other part of the location, not so much.
Alexander Siddig's fantastic, I think, or has the potential to be fantastic. We've barely seen him. Yeah. And I don't know.
It just doesn't have a heart left.
Yeah. Let's get on to the story by story. So scene by scene, Tyrion is with Jorah. Yeah. That's pretty straightforward. Jorah knocks out a fisherman, puts him on the boat. The scene plays very much like in the books, in the sense that, well, obviously it's changed around. I mean, Jorah takes him at Silhoris and then takes him down by boat to Volantis, and it's by the time that they're in Volantis, so he figures out this is Jorah Mormont.
Hopefully they won't run into the same fate as the last person we saw rowing somewhere.
Gendry is still rowing, although they're sailing, not rowing this time around.
Okay, so maybe they'll find their way to where they're going. Yes.
But
Valyria.
It's a fine scene. It works just pretty well, where Tyrion deduces who Jorah is, basically, the bear and the details. And England gets to play a much gruffer character than he did before.
Yeah, a little bit sort of slightly closer to
the character,
but still miles away. But no,
it's fine, and there's not too much to say about it. It's pretty short. It keeps us sort of, and I think this was an appropriate one. Like, they need to have this to kind of tell us what happens right after. Yeah. So I don't have any qualms with it at all. It's fine. It's not it just kind of gives you an idea what's going on. It's fine. Jaime Lannister and his finally reaches Dorne. There's rowing there as well. Bronn rows on the shore.
They didn't get lost.
They didn't get lost. They got to where they were going. Nice little action sequence. I think the main points are before we arrive there, on the ship.
Right.
Where, I mean, obviously the first little bit is actually Jaime looking at an island, thinking, is that Estremont? And the captain don't know, that's Tarf. So there's a nice little connection there to Brienne. But then below deck, they start talking, and this one highlights a problem we have with what they're doing.
Yes, Bronn kind of brings up the problem that we and other viewers probably have, and in asking, why are you doing this, like Mr. One-Handed?
Exactly. I mean, there's, like he says, they'll be fight, we'll be fighting. Well, I'll be. So he's like saying, well, I know you're not really up to fighting.
And it's I'd like to go with an army for this sort of thing, and you're one of the few people who have an army, so
why not? He says, I'm good at this. Why not send 40 of me? Why not send an army? Oh well, we don't want to start a war. Okay, well fine, but why you a one-handed man who's probably the most one of the most recognizable men in the Seven Kingdoms? Why are you doing this? It's not really conducive to a successful mission. And he said, I have to.
Yeah.
I have to. And Bronn fills in the blanks and says, oh well, you released Tyrion, right? Yeah. It's your fault that Tyrion got out, and this is your penance for it. I just have a problem with that. I have a problem with the idea that Jaime, after all he's gone through, will regress to I will go and endanger myself and my daughter by seriously compromising a mission on the off chance that maybe I'll feel better about myself afterward. I
will leave my son, the king, and
in the clutches of Cersei.
Yeah.
with after having told her, hey, there's all these enemies ready to tear us down. Like, he should say, yeah, I really screwed up. I feel horrible about it. The appropriate thing is to make sure Myrcella is safe. The appropriate thing is to make sure Tommen is safe. And to stay here. And not be the guy herring off on the mission that I'm not really capable of achieving. I really dislike that. And to me, it's a twisting around of a character to do what they want him to do, which is to go to Dorne. Like, and to go a step further, they could have done it another way. They could have had Cersei order him. They could have said, here is Gregor Clegane's head. Go and deliver to them, and by the way, tell them that you're bringing Myrcella back. Feel free to invite Trystane to King's Landing.
It didn't have to be done underhanded. It's done over. It's done over the board in the novels with sort of a subplot.
Yeah,
and they could have used that. But no, that's not actiony enough.
Well, it's not just actiony. It's, I mean, yes, okay, but they could have had, we're crossing the Dornish mountains, some Dornish raiders attack us or something. I don't know. But what they could have done is. And I think the reason we didn't go that route is not the action, it's the fact that Cersei ordering it feels to them.
No, I think it's a part of the change on Cersei, absolutely, that they don't want her in that position and taking those actions. But I also think it's because they thought the secret mission. That's awesome.
Yeah, not happy with it. And then it just, because the fact that he can't articulate more than it has to be.
Ron asks the sensible question, and Jaime has no good answer, so apparently they had no good answer.
Yeah, I don't think there is a good answer.
No.
It is to me, it's just, it's...
So it was nice to put that in the episode, thank you.
Yeah, consistency of characters, there's so many things they can be inconsistent about, like travel times, and you kind of go, speed of plot, right?
Yeah.
But character inconsistency, where character seems to be acting in a way very much unlike themselves. And
I think you over here doing this.
We'll just come up with, you'll just do it, and we don't have to explain why you did it. The thinking of your character, we're just gonna do it. I'm not impressed by that. I'm not impressed by that.
That's just bad.
The rest.
And then they get to Ireland.
To Dorne.
Dorne, but apparently it's rained a lot in Dorne lately.
Well, they filmed the filming was on this beach in Northern Ireland, and that's nice and sandy. And yes, the dune is a little grassy, but okay. But then when he's fighting that Dornish knight, and you see this vivid green background behind, and not just the immediate little valley or dip behind him.
Everywhere.
If you look beyond,
that's the Dornish desert, guys.
It's Northern Ireland. I don't understand why they didn't.
That's just sloppy.
I don't understand.
Honestly, they tend to pay more attention. And that the look of something.
I don't get it. I really don't.
Newsflash: Dorne is a desert country.
It's fertile at the valleys, the river valleys. Fertile through. Hard-won fertility for irrigation and a lot of work. But you think of sort of Mesopotamia, Middle Eastern river valley cultures that are irrigation was like
Egypt.
But desert everywhere else.
Desert
and
sand.
I was surprised. I was really surprised. So that's just a weird thing. Like, did they miss it, or they just said forget it? I don't know. Maybe they haven't really established Dorne as a desert country in the show.
I think the map looked kind of yellow.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where, everything is called Dorne and there's no sun spear because,
we got a big one after this one. This is quite a long story. It's actually really the heart of it, despite the title, Sons of Harpy. It's actually about King's Landing.
Yeah.
King's Landing. Now, this is a big one. I kind of have a rough way of breaking it up. Like, first is Cersei, the small council, and the Iron Bank. Now, the Iron Bank thing is a piece of a Feast for Crow material, in which the Iron Bank is saying, look, you guys haven't been paying your debts, time to start paying. And Cersei says, well, she kind of plays it off like Robert did, and where Robert had Littlefinger to kind of do everything. She doesn't have Littlefinger right now. And she kind of says, oh, you'll just have to wait.
Although she already has a letter from Littlefinger.
Oh, yes, the letter arrived, but that's later. Yeah. That's later. But she doesn't have him actually running things.
No,
doesn't matter.
No.
And in any case, and here they want 10% of what they owe paid back now. And Lord Mace say, well, we can't pay. I mean, the crown can't afford it, maybe half. But, House Tyrrell can make up a difference. And then, and if it's clear that idea of the Tyrrells then owning a piece of a debt is not something that Cersei likes. And
especially, with the empty mines of Casterly Rock and all that.
Yeah, the empty mines of Casterly Rock. Obviously it makes her... She can't do it, and
no.
But then I thought this was clever. I mean, they take a page from the epilogue of A Dance of Dragons, of all places, where it's Kevin who comes up with the idea that someone has to go and negotiate a better terms with the Iron Bank, and Cersei and then sends his father-in-law Harris Swift, do it, but.
Obviously, they take a clever idea of Kevin's and give it to Cersei, who wouldn't have.
Well, it's not. I wouldn't call it clever. It's like it's a reasonable idea.
It's
like a rational.
Idea.
It's a
yes,
rational.
Yes, but Cersei isn't being rational at that point. That's part of it.
She is convinced that as the crown, they can just tell people,
fuck off.
Well, you can wait. Basically, wait and wait your turn.
Yeah.
Medieval kings used to be able to do this all the time. They did it all the time.
Yeah.
There were many a ruined banking family and lending operation because of the kings and don't feel like it.
And the same happened in Westeros. We got that mentioned in The World of Ice and Fire, that there were other banks they were brought down by nobles, kings, who did not pay, who defaulted.
But the Iron Bank is different. The Iron Bank is at the pinnacle. It is by far the most important lending institution in the world.
When you don't pay the Iron Bank, they don't go under. You go under.
Yeah. So Cersei picks the wrong fight there. Yeah. Here, but she doesn't pick the fight. She sends someone, and I did think it was really clever that she butters up Mace about you're the only one I could think of doing it, and he obviously he's this complete buffoon, and and then she sends Meereen Tran, and that's very clearly sinister. That is sinister because that is. It's either it's an implicit threat. Like, I don't know if Trant has been told kill him while we're sailing over there, or kill him before he comes back. But at least it has to be running through Marjorie's and Olenna's head. Oh, great! She can now order him killed, and he has no one to defend him. He's got this guy next to him. He thinks he's all puffed up and happy about it, and in fact, the guy could kill him at Cersei's word. And that is a threat to kind of check the Tyrells. And I thought that was great. That was clever. And it is the kind of cunning, the low cunning of Cersei that fits the character of the books.
No, that one I can agree with. I'm just saying that being reasonable about the Iron Bank, that doesn't fit necessarily the point she should be at.
And then they go off to the High Sparrow, where she's meeting him. Now that one's interesting to me in that, the debt issue, which she had just dealt with, is not brought up with the crown. I think, and I may be wrong, but in the first season when Ned comes into the small council and he's told about the debt, I should have looked over my episode guide for the first episode. I'm pretty sure Littlefinger said that, we owe money to the faith as well, as in the books.
I think so, yeah.
So if they said that, it would have been good for her to negotiate, by the way, we also owe you 600,000 dragons or some silly sum like that. You should just forgive that, so... Yeah. And he just said, sure, fine, we don't care about worldly things, we care about defending the
and fate likes to forgive things, so why not forgive the death?
The mother gives forgiveness, not the High Septon. So, the Faith Militant, so they approach it differently. It's not a, in fact, they approach it quite differently, because it's not a quid pro quo where she says, you forgive the debt, I give you the Faith Militant.
No, she just hands that out.
Well, no, she doesn't. She says, I give you the Faith Militant, you go and hunt down a particular person for me. This great sinner in our midst.
She ties it all together there, and just so it's very much a personal gain as opposed to thinking at all about the crown. Which again, so here they make her more stupid.
Well, she turns into much more a petty thing.
Yes,
she's trying
rather than having the advantage of getting the death.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, what is it that she has against Loras? I mean, is it just a move against Marjorie? Like, it's not like Loras is some great ally of hers. He's ineffectual and unimportant.
She's clearly not marrying him.
She loves him, so it's an attack against her. Yeah. But I don't know. I didn't think it was all that. It doesn't seem that sensible. And then they rampage. When we see them rampaging around, there's not the Faith Militant in the books. They're not concerned with stuff like drinking and prostitution that much. I mean, obviously they'll speak against it, but they don't. Yeah. They'll go around smashing up.
And the whole thing with homosexuality, it's it's a sin according to the faith.
A minor, a venal sin. You have to look at if you look at the Middle Ages, they treated it in the earlier part. Later on, it starts getting worse, and in different areas, different places, different times, it varied. But for a long period, it was kind of a venal minor sin. You have these monastic books of law, and they're talking about very minor punishments for being caught committing sodomy with a fellow monk and so on. It was very different. And George has said it's a sin, but they don't feel strongly about it. It's a minor sin. It's a sin of the flesh. It's a sin of it's no different than fornicating outside of marriage. So
they make them very much extremists,
blunter extremists, very much current.
Yeah, and hey, more nudity.
And more nudity, more brothel visits, and male nudity as well.
And what struck me, of course, when we were discussing doing this filming and such was. And I was looking at you writing your review, and that's when I realized that by having Cersei going after Loras, that is entirely taking the place of her going after Marjorie directly in the books. Yeah. And having Marjorie in trouble with the Faith. At least I presume that there has been no setup for being able to do that, at least, accusing her of, for example, not being a virgin when she shouldn't have been sleeping with 8-year-old Tommen, and obviously now, well, she clearly wasn't a virgin even before she slept with Tommen, and she's definitely not one after either, if that account of the wedding night was accurate. So they can't pin anything like that.
No. I think it was quite clear once we understood what they were doing, or what I understood what they're doing.
Yeah, I hadn't put.
You haven't really put it together yet.
No,
it happens sometimes.
And then I. Oh, you mean it happens?
What happens? It happens that because we kind of figure we're going to try and follow the book, and then when they go completely different, we go sometimes a bit slow to pick up on it.
Are you really not going to do that? And
to me, I mean, they could have. I can understand the virginity thing, but they could have done the whole she has lovers. Just introduce some characters who are courting her, and Tommen's a bit young and too innocent for her, and she doesn't necessarily have to sleep with them, but it's enough for the implication that she slept with them, the claim. And this is what happened to Anne Boleyn. She knows very well that, so you don't remember having played her on the Tudors.
Yeah.
Guess
they don't want to do that again.
Yeah, it's fabricated that the character. So I just dislike I dislike Loras as just the gay guy, the gay knight. That is his role, and it's a shame.
Basically it.
I know Finn Jones was really hoping to do some of the stuff in the books, but like the confrontation of Brienne that should have happened last season.
Yeah. There were some interviews with him from
fairly recently talking about where he's tried to in his head he tries to play the character as he read him in the books, even if the scripts don't. And he said he doesn't like when they play him as the gay guy who's interested in fashion and flower arrangements. He felt that was a little, but he does what the script says. Stereotypical. Yeah. I know.
Very refreshing to hear that. And
so it's a shame, but this is what he stuck with. But hopefully it'll give us some really meaty scenes later. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
The other side of the story that we have is sort of Marjorie's reaction to all of this, and Tommen. Again, accepting Marjorie's older, more experienced, Tommen's older, more experienced, they've actually had sex and so on. I thought the angle they use is correct. It looked like a good approach to have Tommen basically pulled between his mother and his wife.
Although he comes across as very young there again.
Well, he comes as very timid and naive and innocent, so there was this whole thing where they were asking him how old he thinks his character is, and he thought he was about 12 years old.
That's one precocious 12-year-old.
Oh, well, it happens.
Yeah. Tommen just didn't strike me as the type to be quite so...
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. It is a curious bit because, I mean, what about legality? I think they preferred on the show to keep it as vague as possible.
Yes.
I
don't think they've told him, but maybe he knows something about how old the character is supposed to be, and then he sort of vaguely aged him up a little bit. I mean, the actor is...
It's like 17, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I thought the angle was right.
Yeah.
Her kind of coming to him, and then he goes to Cersei, and Cersei, I didn't arrest him, it was the High Sparrow, and I'm sure you'll talk to him. And of course, she's told him, whatever you do, to let Tommen talk to you to rescind it. And so he's left unable to do anything. So I thought that worked pretty well. It obviously signals something, but at the end, Marjorie says, I had to go send word to my grandmother. So we know from previews and such that Olenna is coming back onto the screen. Obviously in material that she's not present at all in any of the book version of it. So it'll be interesting to see what she says.
Obviously, we don't know yet. I mean, it is possible what is in store for Marjorie in the books, that she may possibly take an interest. I don't know. It's hard to see that she could actually be.
But I mean, given where Dance of Dragons end, she still hasn't shown up. I don't think it's
true.
Maybe I don't know. It was interesting. The angle was actually interesting, and I thought Natalie Dormer played it well. And I thought he played it well.
For the character, I still just find it so surreal, the whole thing.
It's so different. I mean, the difference is it's not worse at this stage because it is what it is. It's just very, and I guess I'm most surprised by they didn't stick to the sort of Anne Boleyn-ish angle, and maybe again because you already played Anne Boleyn, they thought it was too expected. I don't know.
That's terrible if that was the reason.
And
they shouldn't have cast her, definitely. If they felt that they couldn't go into that storyline because she.
Obviously, we'll say, oh well, they could introduce more male characters, but you don't really need anything deep. You need one or two guys have one or two lines each, and they're just
hanging around with her. Yeah, there could have been a singer there when Cersei came to see them in the morning there, for example.
And this could have started saying, "Oh, she's in fact sleeping." Yeah, I don't know. I find it a bit odd. I'd be interested to find out why they changed the storyline, because I mean, to me, it's like, well, Loras is gay, so let's
and we didn't manage to get him into the Kingsguard, and we kind of don't really know what we're doing with him because of that. And
that part, and honestly, when you put it that way, it just makes you say, well, okay, they're gonna burn him at the stake or something, or execute him.
I'm absolutely certain.
You think Loras is gonna die?
Absolutely, 100% certain that they're killing him this season. And
there's another bit I love that is just kind of falling by the wayside. It's a shame when you see stuff like this and there's so much of the stuff that you want to see just doesn't make it to the screen. And Did you think that a bit? I was thinking with Tommen and the Kingsguard going there, and just there's two things about the Kingsguard and going there. Backing down, I can buy him backing down, because also they throw in a thing with people yelling at him, bastard, abomination. So he's just going there with the. No, he had more guards. Yeah, but Lannister guards as well. It's not like
and then you'd think that there'd be enough, but I guess he doesn't want to risk a riot. But it still felt very weak that this is the king, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. I suppose, but to me it doesn't. He's a kid, and he's way over his head, and he's timid, and he doesn't.
Certainly, if he's supposed to be 12, I can absolutely.
Well, it doesn't matter. 14, 15. He's not Joffrey. He's confrontation. He's averse to confrontation, so I don't have a problem with him. Kind of, he wasn't supposed to be king. I don't have the problem with that at all. The one thing about the Kingsguard is, if you count the Kingsguard, there's 5 Kingsguard, right? And Meryn Trant is off with Mace Tyrell, and Jaime is in Dorne. So there's 7 Kingsguard. What happened to the Kingsguard who went with Myrcella
to Dorne?
Yeah. Either he's dead and he's been replaced quietly. It's all quiet. Or we have to suppose he came back
he just
from Dorne. He delivered her, and he returned, or, I joked that he got seasick, and Myrcella very sweetly told him he had to go back.
Which is completely wrong, because he's a member of the royal family, and there should
He's a Sword and Shield. He should be there, so it is odd that they...
Yeah. Oh, they forgot that he was in Dorne and accidentally appointed another Kingsguard.
I suppose that would be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just forgot about him.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was just a weird bit, but I
Tommen can't
noticed.
count.
I was while I was counting. I noticed. Wait a second, because I was always wondering like what were
Yes,
we
I mean
doing
Tommen
with the guy?
can't count, so he accidentally appointed another one or something.
Yeah. All right, let's move on from there. Off to the wall. So the wall, Stannis, Selyse, and looking at Jon Snow practicing. Now this is interesting. This is a whole new thing that shows up in this episode. I mean,
Yes, this is the introduction of the clue bat.
Yeah, they because they lay it on surprisingly thickly in this episode. So we're talking about Jon Snow, and she's complaining about how he seems impressed. He's Lord Commander, and he was towards all bastard by some tavern wench, and perhaps he said that wasn't Ned Stark's way.
No.
All right, that's interesting. His opinion, he's kind of dubious of that story.
Yeah.
That Ned would sleep with some tavern wench. He thinks there's something more to it.
Clue bat number 1.
Yeah, and then Melisandre comes in, and they kind of lay on thickly again the whole Shireen has royal blood, and Selyse doesn't like Shireen, but Melisandre's whole bit about royal blood makes her, they're planning something nefarious with Shireen, which makes the scene after with Shireen and Stannis all the darker. Yeah, and
because Stannis is completely clueless.
Yeah, he has no idea. He has no idea of how far Melisandre is willing to go and how far Selyse is willing to go.
Yeah.
And then Melisandre convinces him to take him with her. Now that's interesting because it's a departure from a novel again, and says that she doesn't go with him. And raises a good argument here. You listened to Davos last time, you left me behind. And not just Davos,
but I think that in the case in the book, she also has very much of an interest in being on the wall herself.
Yes, she does. So she has a strong
it's one
reason.
of the hinges of the world. Her magic is stronger there. She feels that she has something to do right there.
Yes.
That
seems to be by the wayside.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a sneaking suspicion of what's going on, but we'll see.
Especially after seeing some of the previews for the upcoming, or some of the preview
trailer stuff. Yes, maybe.
I was also
to
thinking
see
about
there.
the little summaries that they put out for the upcoming
Sure,
episodes.
sure. So it'll be interesting. 'Cause, I mean, speculatively, I mean, you got episode 3, where Chekhov's gun is put on the mantelpiece. That's Brienne's insisting she's going to go and kill Stannis. And she's heading to Winterfell, chasing after Sansa, and he's going to Winterfell, and you kind of wonder, they're at least setting up very clearly a confrontation of some sort.
Yeah.
Does she kill him? Does she get killed? It's a question. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All sorts of things can happen between that point.
But we do know that Melisandre's familiar with R'hllor's way of resurrecting people.
Yeah, and she believes in the whole king's blood.
Yeah.
Only death can pay for life, maybe. There's all sorts of things going on that make me fear that the angle... this is my prediction. My prediction is that Stannis will die, or by Brienne, or by the Boltons, I don't know, and Melisandre will use Shireen to bring him back. As in, she will sacrifice Shireen to resurrect Stannis, because she's convinced that he is the Lord's, the warrior of light. He is the prince who was promised, and Azor Ahai reborn, even though they never use those terms. That is my take, and I would expect this next episode will probably touch more on that sort of thing. So I think that's what they're building to. That's my guess. It's not quite what I see happening in the novel. I have a different view of the novel.
I certainly don't see Brienne going to the north.
No. In the novel, I imagine something different.
Yeah, I think that Melisandre's going to be resurrecting someone in the novels, but
yeah, and I think Stannis is going to be faced with a sort of Iphigenia moment.
Yes,
that's what my take.
I think he's going to have the choice basically,
Yeah.
as opposed to being dead at the time of this being done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is our speculation. No inside info. We're speculating. And that really ends it. I mean, it is fairly brief, but it's just they're if you're paying attention, they're really laying some things down very very clearly. I think, and maybe too clearly. Let's go on to the next thing. We're still on the wall. So, Jon Snow's writing his letters. Samuel's there passing them on. We have a Lord Ashford, Lady Caulfield. Caulfield is obviously a reference to Bernadette Caulfield, the producer. Lord Smallwood,
Sam will seem amused by the name, I guess. There's a Lord Mason, I think, mentioned. I kind of wonder if that was actually a reference to someone as well in the production.
A bit otherwise odd that they would but they keep making up houses even though there are so many to choose from.
Well, Caulfield is obviously...
Yes, but I'm saying if Mason isn't a reference, then it's odd that they just...
Yeah, but then he comes to the legend of Bruce Bolton and he's refusing to do it. And this is very much is based on the book in which Jon is faced at the opening of the second chapter. Like, I don't want to sign this letter to King Tommen, begging his help. Right? I don't want the help from the Lannisters, but he finally signs it. He has to man up and do what's right. And they do the same thing here. I don't have a problem with the shift to the Boltons. It was
more immediate, I guess.
More immediate, more obvious. But then Sam leaves and in comes Melisandre, and Sam was kind of say, no, he's busy, but no, Jon says fine. And she comes in and, well, she proceeds to try to seduce him.
Yeah.
And this reminds me...
I mean, she's doing that, since she's starting the process in the books.
She sees something, that there is something significant.
She's getting
about
a little
him.
touchy.
She's a little temptress, but she doesn't... It's unclear entirely what she thinks. But she's certainly very interested in him. That's very clear.
Yeah.
She doesn't go so far, and I guess you could argue that I don't want to say seduction, because that feels like she's out, but she's acting maybe seductively. There's certain things about that are seem like aimed to pique his interest.
She's doing that whole thing, sort of, taming wild animal, little touches, and getting him used to her presence is what she's doing.
I suppose so. That's a very Wheel of Time kind of thing, wasn't it?
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, but that's what she's doing.
I suppose. But but then, as somebody said, yeah, we need some nudity, get the Duchy to do it. As Chris Van Houten said on Late Night with Seth Meyers.
Yeah. She tries to make everyone very comfortable.
Well, no, she has said that her approach to it is because she doesn't like doing it, but her approach is like, just take off all the clothes, don't go hiding herself between scene takes. Just say, look, I'm here, I'm naked, it's a body, just get over it. And so she can go on and focus on desexualizing it for the crew. Yeah. Because there's
and it
20,
works
30
so
guys.
well that they keep wanting it.
Yes, that was a very good joke. But the fact is especially if rumors, come second, third season where Una Chaplin said that one of the leading ladies had told them that nope, no more nudity for me. And there's two options. There's Esme Bianco.
Yeah.
Who dies in the third season. And there's Emilia Clarke, who does have a nude scene in the third season, but then after that, she's kept her clothing on, and including, as we noted, the weird scene where
she's grasping the
for no reason, it's Meereen, it's warm. There's no
there.
No,
I have to cover up.
It is a convention for when the actress doesn't want they don't want the nudity, but whatever. I don't know, but Van Houten is willing to, apparently so far she's been willing to do it, and so they seem to kind of go out of the way to have her do it. And I can't complain per se because she's good to look at.
No, you're there.
I mean, she's a beautiful woman. And
last time it was India Varma that you couldn't complain anything about, but just because she
did see her naked though.
No, but I'm just saying that you were forgiving her a lot and saying what a good actress she was and pinning it all on her being naked.
No, I didn't. You pinned it all on her being naked. But I can't complain about the fact that it feels very forced, of a strained attempt to just get some more Melisandre nudity out there. I don't know. You can serve the purpose, but it's just her way and whatever, and it's in keeping with the character that they created. That she gets naked for
how convenient
everyone.
That they kept with that.
I don't know, but basically Jon says, no, I can't, and I still love Ygritte. That was, it was nice. It was a nice scene. You could see the temptation, and he's struggling against he's a young man. He's got urges and needs, and this is being offered.
And there's a naked redhead standing in front of him.
Yeah, but at the same time he says no, and then she says, nothing, Jon Snow, which was obviously a line from the book. There's slightly different. Then you know nothing.
Yes, I mean, I like this reaction because obviously he's very startled when she says that line. In the books, she had no reason to know about what Ygritte used to tell him. Yeah. And
same here, basically.
Yes. Yeah, same here, basically. So
is it coincidence? Is it a bit of her magic? I mean, obviously there's some cool stuff like the bit where he loses control of Ghost. Like he can't connect with Ghost anymore, and Ghost just goes up to her and she's and it's clear her magic is sort of, she's exerting her ability to sort of block his connection.
In a similar way that the wall blocks, perhaps.
Yeah.
Obviously, and she's able to get the wall,
So I mean, interesting scene. I just kind of wish like we didn't fall.
No, she didn't have to get naked. She could just have been seductive.
Yeah.
Is it again? Nudity.
Or she could have slipped her hand under her robe or something, so you wouldn't necessarily. But they didn't. They obviously didn't feel the need to do that.
No, well, they obviously had the quota.
All right, next scene. Okay, we'll talk about Sansa next.
Clue back.
So Sansa, Winterfell, the Crypt at Winterfell. Great to see it again. I guess we haven't seen it since. Well, I guess it's the second season when Bran came out of it. And great little callback. I mean, I love the fact that the feather.
Yes.
They had Robert
I mean,
Lee
you
there.
could call it a callback in two ways, because the material that they are using is from A Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's
one of Ned's chapters.
Yeah, the details of the Harrenhal tourney, as he describes it, the smiles dying and all that.
One of those beautiful, beautiful things that I think was one of our main complaints about, we had some complaints about the first season too. In retrospect, they seem very minor, but that one does still remain a big one. The fact that they cut that, the fact that they didn't leave that material somehow for Ned. They couldn't leave it in the context where he has it, in
thoughts,
thoughts, and in a situation where he doesn't have anyone to share it with directly.
Yeah.
So,
but they could have had him say it to Arya or Sansa or something. I mean, sure. It's like the 15th chapter. It's quite fascinating to have a bit from Game of Thrones. Sure.
Yeah.
Now, visually it was strong. I mean, having it in the crypt, Sansa being there is obviously very unexpected. My only issue really is that it's Littlefinger narrating, and this is the second time Littlefinger has gotten story.
A significant, emotionally important piece of backstory which he has no emotional connection to.
Yeah, so in the first season, he is the one who ended up, by necessity, they tried to get it in, and the weather and the production was against them, and they couldn't, so they shoved it onto Littlefinger. It was the story of the Mountain and the Hound. Littlefinger has no real connection. It's just a salacious bit of gossip for him.
I guess you could say that it was by necessity here too, since Ned can't do it.
Ned can't do it, so there's no one else around to do it. So I guess.
They caused that themselves.
They caused that themselves. So, but
they didn't. This is the problem, is that we know from what they have said that I think that they've commented on not wanting to lay out certain things too early.
Yeah.
And the problem is that now They clearly wanted to avoid laying out certain clues about a certain central mystery, which everyone probably who's watching this is aware of. And they didn't want those clues to come out in the first season, because they figured people would probably put it together too quickly then.
Who
cares? Yeah, because... So instead, they pack this into one episode. We've now had 2 clue bats about this mystery.
First you have Sansa saying, I'm not sure Ned...
Dubious about the story of Jon's parentage.
At least dubious about the idea of, the mother. But, what is Ned Stark's way? Is he even going so far as to say, I'm not really like Ned to sleep around at all? So then you have a story about Lyanna and Rhaegar, and that look from Littlefinger when, Rhaegar chose my aunt, and then he kidnapped her and raped her, and he kind of looks at her, and there's this weird smile, and it's like, maybe that's not the story.
So apparently, Littlefinger is supposed to know something else,
he believes something else.
He believes something else, which actually we have no indications in the books that...
I'll say, we've argued about this. I think when Robert is putting forward the Rhaegar rape Lyanna storyline, this is not necessarily what everyone else believes. There are people who knew Rhaegar who kind of go, maybe think something different was going on, but they don't know exactly what. All they know is
I'm kind of dubious that Littlefinger has thought much about it at all.
It doesn't matter. I think I don't care about. It's just, he doesn't have no connection to it. So to me, it's like I wish it would have been someone with a connection.
Because there is a little bit of a to me, there is a little bit of that gossip element to how he's telling that
Yeah.
as well. Just like he
Sure.
told the story of, how, the mountain and how the Hound got his scars from his brother and all of that.
Yeah.
So, and I dislike it being reduced to gossip. Even if he's...
It's topical because they're looking at Lyanna's
yes, it is
statue,
topical,
so-
but there's still a little bit of that salacious gossip, kind of, or...
There's no real thematic connection.
No.
So, going on, then the whole thing is I've got to leave, and I'm leaving you
Yeah.
here, and he lays out his plan, and he's gambling on Stannis attacking Winterfell, and apparently having the larger army, which
Yeah.
we didn't really know what he had. I have to assume he's bought a lot of sellswords.
Yeah, I guess he got a lot of money from Bravos.
Yeah, he got
They're
sellswords,
like,
but we haven't seen them.
No.
Weirdly,
He doesn't even have the wildlings and still has the
larger army.
larger army.
I
so-
don't quite know how that works, but there's actually it's a complete reversal in the
And
books.
actually, are
he
they even going to leave out
in the
getting the
books-
clans and such as well?
Of course they are. Of course they are.
Yeah. Which kind of means that he loses all the advantage of having people who know the winter and terrain and all of that.
Oh, do you think they care?
Fair
they
point.
only have 10 hours. So I don't blame
Yeah,
them.
okay.
I don't blame them.
But yes,
But-
but they're portraying Stannis as being in a very strong position, and it feels unjustified.
It feels weird.
Yeah.
It feels weird because it's sort of is a reversal. In the books, it's like a struggle for him to get together the forces to match the Voltons. And then part of his story is figuring out how to do that. And
But of
that's-
course, they needed him to have the larger army so that Littlefinger would bet on him.
Yeah, I guess so.
That was it.
I guess so. Yeah.
They
He's-
probably just decided that so that they could write that line for Littlefinger.
Yeah, so he's betting on him, and then she said, well, what if you're wrong? What if he loses? What if he gets killed? Which obviously is a big... And, you'll just have to, outmaneuver Roose Bolton, and, Ramsay, make him your own, own him, he's already besotted, if you will. And now,
Yeah.
this one, guys,
Yeah.
look. After our previous review, people are like, oh, you guys misunderstood. I think I'm one of the few people who understood that Littlefinger was lying to Ramsay about not knowing anything about him. He knows what a monster he is, but he doesn't want him to know. And
Like, why?
Why?
What's the
Why?
point? Sorry.
Why? Oh, well, Littlefinger says that you don't let your enemy know what you're really up to. That way they'll never, keep them confused. They'll never know what you really want. But it's clear he's playing people here, right?
Yeah.
And Ramsay is playing, I'm all sweet and nice and innocent, right?
And he looks so convincing, doesn't he?
And so Ramsay thinks he can get away with that. He thinks,
Yeah.
well, people don't really know what I've been doing. I can play however I want. And Littlefinger is seemingly either playing along. Why? To me, what would have been reasonable is if Littlefinger does know, he should say to the guys, well, Roose, I know Ramsay's a monster. He better not hurt Sansa. Let's say he's concerned primarily about Sansa's... Like, he needs the alliance, but he's concerned about Sansa's safety. He could tell him, make sure that Ramsay doesn't hurt her, or we're going to have trouble. Or, she could do the ruthless Littlefinger, which is, I know Ramsay's a monster. I don't care what happens to her.
But I mean,
I want
because
the alliance.
the thing is that this is exactly what he does in the books with the character who is in Sansa's position. He's the one who gets them fake Arya, aka Jane Poole.
Oh, yeah.
Who has been
Abused and
and
forced
trained
to
in,
train
in brothels, which he has ordered, and he sends her off there fully knowing what Ramsay is like.
Yeah, pretty much. And it says, she has, Jane has, scars on her back from being whipped, and, she's Sansa's age. So, Littlefinger is...
Obviously, it would
Sansa is
perhaps be a
different than
stretch. Yes, I mean, be a stretch that Littlefinger will be so callous about Catelyn's daughter.
But if they wanted to play him off as he's being completely ruthless, he should say, well, I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
And that would make them feel more secure, and they would think, oh, great, okay, because they could think, well, Bruce could think, well, yeah, what happens if Ramsay hurts her? Can that jeopardize my alliance? And then, so, I just find it a big stretch. Like, why would he lie to him? Just say, don't pretend with me. I don't care what you say.
And I mean,
to Sansa,
and this
but-
makes it clear where he's, I think.
He says he's he's lying to Sansa about Ramsay being besotted, but just to keep her confident about why not not tell her, well, Ramsay's a very difficult case, and
You have to be careful.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Littlefinger. The idea is on the show, Ramsay is an unknown. Remember, they didn't have any of the stuff of the Bastard of Bolton running around doing atrocities and Roderick Castle having to chase him down. They didn't do any of that. So Ramsay is genuinely an unknown.
That Littlefinger hasn't bothered to look into.
Well, he has, because he says it's unusual for him not to have known any. I think he did try to look into it.
Yeah, well, he should have found out something.
Well, the thing is they want to play him as an unknown, but he's flayed bodies at Moat Cailin, and there were thousands of soldiers passing through for face all the flayed bodies. He's flayed people, he was there convincing Ian to flay people at Winterfell, and fine, they killed all the inhabitants, but there are people, the North remembers, who is that woman who shows up? There must have been some people, locals, who might have heard something. He's flayed people at Castle Curwen very, very recently, and left survivors, hung up their bodies in Winterfell, where there are these Stark royalists apparently sneaking about. And does no one tell Littlefinger? Does no one warn Sansa? Does no one... it strains credulity, and I think this is another example of them twisting characters and twisting story just to get the reaction they want. They want to be able to have Littlefinger give her over to the Boltons while being unaware of just how bad Ramsay is. Because it breaks their depiction of him as being interested to at least to some degree in her welfare. Like if he knew what Ramsay really was, the Littlefinger they written wouldn't do this. No. I guess. Or he would try to mitigate it somehow, like try to make sure that nothing happened. Yeah. But they want the cake and they're eating it too. Or they want to eat it as well. So I'm iffy on this part of it. I don't like it. It's very convenient for me. You say, oh, it's such a huge complex show and they can't be so bound up in their how they depicted the characters because suddenly they've gotten a better idea or they realize they have to cut out something.
That's how you write good characters, not how you write good storylines.
Yeah, that's how you write. You kind of try to remain consistent. So I don't know. It's not one of the finest moments of Game of Thrones in my mind.
Oh, those can be summed up.
And he kisses her, the kiss, and she's kind of stiff and a little. Still finds it a little weird. Alrighty. Technically, we could go on and talk about Dorne again, but I think we've said what we had to say about Dorne, or in the sense.
Yeah, I don't think we really want to say much more about them.
Yeah. So Meereen's really interesting because, again, as I said, Sons of a Harpy is the name of the episode, and yet Meereen is like the last 6 minutes of the episode. And it opens with Barristan reminiscing about Rhaegar.
Yes, clueback number 3.
Clueback number 3. All of a sudden, you got, Jon, I don't know about Ned and some tavern wench. And then, Lyanna and Rhaegar, and Rhaegar made off with Lyanna. And then Rhaegar was this nice guy who sang in the streets, and Barristan really seemed to like him. He doesn't think of him as some rapist, and what's going on?
Yeah. And this actually goes together with the fact that last time we saw Barristan and Dany, he was telling her that, well, it's true what people said about the Mad King. He was mad. So he's told her one true version of a relative that she's heard something about. And now he's telling her, well, wait, this is, she's only heard good things about Rhaegar in general. And now he's confirming that. Yeah, so if we're going to trust his version on Aerys.
So and we discussed in our book to screen, the Rhaegar here is not quite the Rhaegar of the books. In a sense, I don't think Rhaegar was the sort to go out to the streets to sing to people and have fun getting drunk with Barristan. And first off, Sir Dane was the guy he would have with him because he was his closest friend. And
Barristan makes a point of this in it.
Yeah,
he wishes that Rhaegar had trusted him more.
Yeah, he never trusted him as much as he trusted Arthur Dane. And he loves singing, but at the same time, he is a melancholy person. He was born under tragic circumstances. It marked him deeply. He believes at the very young age, becomes convinced that he has a weight of destiny. Yeah. That prophecy is directing his life. He has this mad father. Unstable father. He's not a happy person. No. And
we had a bit of an argument about this that I felt more strongly that seemed sort of really out of character.
Okay, yes.
And Elio was insisting, well, he had friends. I mean, he had friends, not just Arthur Dane. So he can't have been.
He can't have been. I think
like complete party pooper.
He cannot have been constantly morose and melancholy all the bloody time.
Well, I don't think morose is right. Solemn, melancholy,
but all the
weighed
time,
down by destiny.
Even Ned Stark was able to laugh and have
fun.
Yes,
I'm sure he did. But and then I made the comparison when somebody like Elric is also described as melancholy, and Elric has friends. Until
he kills them.
Until he kills them. And since Rhaegar did not have a soul-drinking sword, he was able to keep some friends.
Yeah. So we have that bit, and then she sends him, sends Barristan off to go, sing a song for her. Which, by the way, when we catch up with him, they mess up. They should have had Ian McElhinney singing some little song from Westeros. It could have been The Bear and the Maiden Fair if they wanted to go back to that one. Could have been, Seasons of My Love or... all sorts of songs that they could have used. It would be nice to have Jenny of Oldstone's song about her and the Prince of Dragonflies, because that one has a resonance of Rhaegar. Just to have that, and to have him, because there's a book I love. It's written by Judith Tar. It's Alamut. Alamut is a book about. It's set in the Crusader Kingdom, but it features sort of elves. Witches, like if they existed, these sort of elven types, and it's this knight, Aiden, the Knight of the Flame, who is it Aiden?
Yes.
And he is sort of the greatest knight in the world. He's this elf guy, and the book opens beautifully because he's in the Holy Land and he's singing a Crusader song. And Tar has a degree in medieval history, and it's an authentic Crusader song, and it really characterizes the person. So in my mind, having this knight, this great legendary knight, singing this song, could have been some song of chivalry. It could have been. It just would have been a really wonderful touch. It would have been connected to that scene. It would have connected to Rhaegar. It just would have been really awesome. It's a minor thing. I just thought like, oh, they really should have had him singing. So Hizdar's playing. For the pits to open, and they juxtapose this. And I mean, this is interesting. I mean, he's making a cogent argument. Like, this is our culture, and it was a thing that unified everyone. Like, slaves, I guess, would be allowed to go to watch the fights, and it was a unifying thing, and we should continue. And she's saying no, but they juxtapose it with the image of the Sons of Harpy preparing for attack. Now, this is an attack that is not in the books. It is in the sense that it's this organized, massive attack across in several areas, killing Second Sons, killing Unsullied, all in this way. It's a trap.
It's again playing up the idea that the internal rebellion
is the big danger.
Is entirely taking the place of the external danger that is. I mean, Dany has to deal with both the internal unrest and the external danger.
But the Sons of Harpy are a problem. They're murdering people every day, but it's not quite in this fashion. And whereas on the external side, she has Yunkai, she has other Giscari cities, she has the Volantine, she has Karth, all turning against her because she's disrupted the slave trade throughout the Eastern world.
I mean, they play up that aspect much more, how much of a damage that she has done to the economy of the whole area.
Yeah, she's up, like all of these other places kind of have slaves, and the fact that she is
and like Meereen, they haven't actually mentioned that at all. They probably should have. Meereen has no real resources at all. They had slaves.
Slavery.
So,
the slave market was their big economic point. I mean, they had olives and so on. They got burned. They don't have that. They're fairly resource poor, so they haven't. The economic side has generally not been a big part of it.
I mean, they could have sort of thrown it in by showing that it had been completely.
Well, we should have known the economic side from the second season when the richest man in Karth has an empty vault.
Yeah, and the Lannisters have no gold.
So, anyways, and then the attack, and you realize Grey Worm is fighting for his life, and one by one, Unsullied are falling, and then he's the last survivor, and there's a dozen guys around him, and then the hero moment when Barristan comes in. I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah.
This is a departure, and I'm sorry, but they didn't get to use him more. And I'm sorry that we don't see his storyline in Dance with Dragons, because there's some great stuff connecting to the past, and there's some great stuff just about Barristan. It's amazing stuff about Barristan.
Obviously, some of it would have been very hard to get at. It's very internal.
Yes, it's very internal, but at the same time, it would have been cool. But they're changing things and they're compressing it and they're making it go a lot faster. So,
but I certainly can say that
when he dies, I would hope it would be in a suitable way for such a hero, and he's a heroic person. As I said, one of the scenes, the scene, the moment of someone shows the greatest bravery and sort of heroism in A Dance of Dragons, it's Barristan. And you don't quite realize it, but it's him when Drogon descends on Dazak's pit, and he's here, dragon, here, try me, and what kind of person calls out a dragon, to save his queen? I'm sorry, but we will never see it. But this was a suitable ending for such a person. It's so so often in Westeros that characters don't get the endings that you kind of think they deserve.
And I guess you constantly worry about that with the characters that are still alive. That can they at least get killed, in sort of the right way, and
a way that feels like obviously with Jaime will say they're all shit ways. Right? Yeah, but you kind of just want characters to kind of something that feels
accomplish something. Accomplish something. Like Kay tends to do it.
So anyways, I liked it. And
I found it very hard to, even though it's such a departure for me that I found it very hard to connect with it. Even so, it's just that because it was okay. Oh, so they're doing that way, and it's like, well, that's definitely not what's happening. So
no.
I guess I can tell that this is going to be more and more of my reaction in the future.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
It's kind of blasé, kind of. Okay, that's what we're doing.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it has a positive side. We've discussed this before. The more they start going off book, the less of spoils. So, but at the same time,
we're definitely not going to spoil us about how Barristan gets killed. Because I'm pretty sure he's buying it pretty soon in the books. Unfortunately,
yeah. This season has been unusual. I think this is the first season in which we have had 2 invented scenes as our favorite scenes of episodes, and maybe this will continue, especially when there's just nothing left from the books. But we'll just have to pick favorite scenes from just the episodes that are invented. But at the same time, their highs, their best invented scenes, aren't as good as George's best scenes. So it's a little bit. It's just the medium to some degree.
It can never, at least for us, it can never approach. Now, certainly, anything of the quality of the books. And yes, I know there's going to be people who disagree, who didn't particularly like Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. We obviously disagree about that. There's some
Feast for Crows in particular. When we reviewed it, we point out some structural things.
There are some structural things where it most clearly, I think, the fact that where it follows. I think it is a bit of a problem that 2/3 of it are parallel to Feast for Crows, and then the last part isn't. It creates not the most aesthetic structure in that sense.
I think it was kind of necessary because of the fact
but
that
it was necessary. It was necessary. It had to move forward. At the same time, it got some absolutely amazing writing, piece by piece.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we're not getting with Theon's story.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we may get in a warped form with Theon's story. Tyrion's journey, very different feel.
Yeah. No Quentin Nora. So there's a lot of things that. So, anyways, it feels like digressing, but Barristan's death. I liked it. I thought the score was not Jawadi's. It was a new piece, a new sort of hero score.
Yeah, it didn't.
It felt a little rushed to me. I didn't care for it. One of the things that people I'm kind of waiting for them to say, hey, how about the choreography? It was edited so quickly. Well,
this is a close quarter, so.
Well, it's not. Well, it is a close quarter. That's part of it. But the other thing is, and it's lots of people, so it's the chaos. The other thing is, look, it's quite clear, but there's a stunt double. Ian McElhinney is a man in his 60s, and yes, Barristan is in his 60s, but Barristan is supposed to be the sort of
amazingly long, amazing longevity. In
yes,
his,
one of those amazing sort of elder athletes you read about, who are people who are running marathons at the age of 60, people who are out racing people 20 years or junior. McElhinney isn't, and that's no fault of his.
No.
That's just nature. Most people aren't gifted that way. We've said this before. So they kind of have to. And I kind of actually, one of the things I had to say, I kind of like the fact that if you compare Jaime and Ned's fight scene from the first season, and you compare it to this, now obviously we have different fight choreographers, but to me, I mean, the Jaime-Ned fight scene is pretty flashy. Not in the Oberyn, wushu, whirly-twirly, but there's a bit more spinning and so on. They didn't really do that with Barristan. Barristan, I like thinking of sort of the old master samurai, and the way they were doing it, we were like every single blow, someone dies.
And somebody died.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's someone who's so experienced, who's such a master at what he's done, but he knows he's not as fast as them anymore, but he knows the moment to be precise. So
I mean, this is normally not something that fits into Westeros. I mean, George said, even the best knight can't take on, just any number of foes. But up to a certain point, the knight in the trained knight is going to have a huge advantage, at least going in against
untrained people with knives for the most part. I mean, he's got they've got numbers, but in some ways in that space the numbers acted against them, and they used that. They did some great stuff. So I thought it was.
Well, we've been off on a few tangents today, I think.
Yes.
But partially because it's becoming more and more difficult to sort of how to sort of interact with the episodes, I think, in that because we are reviewing and we are relating to them as an adaptation. And that's becoming increasingly tricky, and I don't just think it doesn't work to just drop it either, because I don't really think I have an interest in dissecting them as just a show, because I'm not really invested in it as a show.
No.
If it was just a show, it's not my thing.
I understand that. I mean, I love television and cinema, so I kind of pay attention to such things, but I'm not sure. I mean, I don't make videos about Mad Men.
No, you just go on and on.
Well, no, it's the best show on television, and it has been for several years. But I still,
my thing.
I
can still recognize the writing.
I don't make videos about it anyway. Or I did make videos about Breaking Bad and all these other shows that I watch. So, no, I without the books, I don't know that I would make videos about them. But it is George's world, interpreted by other people, but still George's world. So we'll still do videos at least for this season. I don't know about next, but anyways.
Obviously, if the book gets out beforehand, one hopes that may be the case now.
Yeah. Anyways, with that, we'll
that
wrap
was
up.
it for episode 4, and we'll be back next week for Kill the Boy.
Yeah, an interesting quote from the novels, which has, obviously it sounds darker, maybe, just to people who don't know what's in the books, when maybe it actually will be, or who knows, they may surprise us and come up with a boy to kill.
One death at least, I would expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until then.